9:16 on the morning show with Jeff and Will. We are back on this fine Monday morning. The sun is starting to rise, or starting to at least poke out from the clouds that have been over us for the majority of the morning, as we bring on Tina Trasher from the Rockland County Business Journal. Good morning, Tina. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Well, a little very sad about the Middle East. I just couldn't take I just spent a lot of time in front of the television yesterday, and just unthinkable things. I
don't think anybody could really take their eyes off it. It was hard to avoid.
I know. Happy Columbus Day, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I guess we move on with the business of the day. Today,
it's all we can do.
What's that?
It's all we can do.
It's all we can do. Today we're going to look at what I think is a Houston we have a problem situation here in Rockland County.
Ooh.
We just published an editorial yesterday, and the title is that Rockland Green is becoming a juggernaut and why it should matter to you being every resident of Rockland, every taxpayer of Rockland.
And why is that?
And why is that? We start with a little history lesson of Robert Moses. For those who don't know the name Robert Moses was a man who was brilliant and had great vision to change the entire landscape of New York. And he started out young and bright, and at Yale, he amassed a lot of power and became the man who essentially is responsible for all the bridges and roads and parks that most of us can identify if we live here in the metropolitan region and upstate as well. But at a certain point, Robert Moses's power became unchecked and became dangerous. And there is a seminal book called The Power Broker. It is written by Robert Caro. And somewhere around page 675 in the 1,100-page book, we finally, after sort of a very long rise of power by Robert Moses, he finally starts on his descent, or at least meets with his first major defeat. And the book, has always been a lesson to some on the abuse of power, and on others, it's a guidebook for those who crave it. But what happened was, at this point in time, this is around the 40s, and for a decade, Moses tried to build a great big bridge from the foot of the waterfront in Brooklyn all the way stretching over to New York's harbor, where you have Fort Clinton. And there was opposition to many of his projects, but typically Robert Moses had built a system, where everybody yesed him to death. He understood the power, the levers of power, and he did this, and this is what we're going to segue to talk about. He did this with the structure of public authorities. So the long and short about Robert Moses, for the purpose of what we're going to talk about today, is that this was the first time he finally met with opposition, and that was because for the first time he was blindsided by a woman, that woman being Eleanor Roosevelt, who essentially whispered into her husband's ear and said, "No way are we having that." And the president, who actually did have a long adversarial relationship with Moses, used his power through the War Department and quashed the bridge. And instead, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was built over his objection. Now, the big picture here is that public authorities certainly can be useful. They do manage all sorts of municipal functions. They are often involved in roads and transportation. But the thing is that when they begin to overstep or misuse their power or manipulate or lie, it's a disservice to the public, and they also tend to bring trouble to their own doorstep. And sometimes it takes a while, but I think typically it does catch up. So why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because Rockland Green, which is the former Solid Waste Management Authority, is clearly stretching its power base. And in doing so, and in becoming more high profile, we are starting to see, some disturbing ways in which this authority operates. Now, this seems like a harmless thing, for example, but they're putting up this taxpayer-sponsored ad on Facebook that suggests to residents that they should wear recyclable Halloween costumes. This is not really a PSA. They're also running these television ads that, project them as useful and wholesome. And so this is really the first time we're seeing Rockland Green's visibility like this, and one might say, well, why are they undertaking a corporate feel-good campaign? And the answer is because they are trying to engender the public's goodwill, because they're gearing up to issue bonds and to spend an awful lot of taxpayer money for a high-profile project to build a $20 million-plus animal shelter, essentially in a location that most people feel is the wrong location. And with that project, and this was, something that Robert Moses understood, will come a slew of construction contracts and new jobs when that operation is up and running.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sorry, you're saying?
Yeah, so up and running. Now, Rockland Green has also become just increasingly aggressive in improving its branding, and also we see trying to control the narrative around its role in the community, and it's found willing partners. Now, here's the thing: people out there say, "Well, Rockland Green, what can I do about that?" Rockland Green is a public authority. It's a quasi-governmental agency. It's not the same thing as voting your elected officials in and out of office. So that's the power that we have when we're dissatisfied with how a town or a village is running. Except that Rockland Green is made up of your town supervisor. In Orangetown and Haverstraw and Stony Point and Clarkstown and what's the one I'm missing? And Ramapo. Rockland Green is made up of every town supervisor, a handful of county legislators, 2 village mayors, the village of Haverstraw and the village of Grandview, and somebody from Ed Day's office. These are the people who are voting on that board. They are all accessible to residents through their own municipalities. And so, in just, there's a quote that we pull out here from Robert Caro's book, where he says, "A public authority possesses not only the powers of a large private corporation, but some of the powers of a sovereign state." He goes on to say, "The power to establish and enforce rules and regulations for the use of its facilities was in reality nothing less than the power to govern its domain by its own laws." One really, really disturbing thing that people should understand and know is we all, maybe one time or another, we have all foiled Freedom of Information Law Act. We have all foiled for maybe public documents for one, not all, but many of us have foiled for public documents that are relevant to something that we might care about. And you go to any town website and you just simply type in what you're looking for, and then the town has, by law, 5 days to respond to you, and then another 20 or so to get back to you with some reasonable answer for whatever it is that you might be seeking. Well, Rockland Green, and this is absolutely unprecedented. So they create this artificial obstacle when you issue a FOIL by requiring a notarized signature on its FOIL form, even though no requirement for a notarized signature exists under New York's FOIL, Freedom of Information Law Act. So, I suppose this is to thwart people from seeking information, and they're betting, and maybe they shouldn't, but they're betting that people won't take them to court over these FOIL denials. That is, if people can even, bother to go ahead and get a notary. This is unprecedented. This is also very, very troubling. And, finally, I would make a shout out to my fellow reporters that when Rockland Green issues a press release, that is not meant to be printed as is. That is meant to be looked at, analyzed, and checked, rather than just run without any kind of. This is all about checks and balances, and we as reporters, we are the fourth estate. We are the guards at the gate. We are what checks government. Of course, everybody should be checking. All the people who sit on Rockland Green's board should be looking at what they're voting at. Recently, Rockland Green, out of nowhere, switched up a meeting, held a meeting for a very important meeting at 11 o'clock in the morning. I don't even know if there's a notice issued or not, but this is the sort of thing where just by luck, one source happened to be there who happened to let us know and probably let other people know that this important meeting was taking place at 11 o'clock, even though they typically meet at 5 o'clock, which is also not the most convenient time for most people, on the last Thursday of each month. So the bottom line here is that Rockland Green is a public authority. Rockland Green has an open checkbook. They can keep taxing the Rockland citizenry. With the only ones who can step up are your elected officials. They can keep expanding their powers as they have done in the last year or so, and they are about to, as I said, embark on a pretty big project that will involve bonding for future projects. So I know this sounds a little wonky maybe, but the thing is that when we don't have good government, it really starts to compromise the system, and we all feel it, because it's not a system where there are strong checks and balances. So Moses eventually figured that out. He figured that out ultimately when he tried to cut Greenwich Village in half with another one of his proposed projects. And once again, he met up with an activist. Her name was famous woman, Jane Jacobs, and she was able to stop that project. So the point is, whether you're Eleanor Roosevelt or Jane Jacobs or anybody listening to this and beyond, we all play a role in civics. We all have responsibility in what happens to the community that we live in. And at the very least, inform yourselves.
Mm-hmm. What if people happen to share your view on Rockland Green, because the board is made up of all elected officials? We recently got the rundown of who's running for office, and it appears every supervisor besides the Clarkstown supervisor is running unopposed.
I know that is so disturbing. I can't even begin to pontificate on how disturbing that is and how unsettling that is in order to have a balanced democracy. I mean, I don't know what it says about Rockland County, frankly.
Do you think there could be, I know there's a write-in candidate, or at least a campaign that was attempted to have been started for the DA's office, because that's also an office that's running unopposed, but we haven't heard any updates on that.
Nothing's official with that yet. Yeah,
nothing's official gone in because the paperwork's already been filed. There's no deadline to put, or the deadline's already passed to put someone's name officially on there. But could you see other towns besides Clarkstown, because they already have an opposition to the incumbent, a movement like that happening, not just because they share your concerns about Hightower, but just because, they simply want another option there on the ballot?
Well, when's the last time a write-in candidate won an election?
That's also, write-in candidacies or write-in, election candidates are very rare to find victory.
Well, it's usually a statement more than it is a serious, a serious effort.
Hey, the Jets beat the Broncos yesterday. Anything can happen.
All right,
There
I'm
you go.
assuming that's a football reference, which that's a disadvantage for me.
It's a disadvantage for me too, but I know the Jets are bad at the sport, so that's the underlying commentary there. Jets are not great.
If politics is a sport, and I'm sure many believe that it is, then Rockland County needs to up its game. I mean, we need competition. We need fresh ideas. We need to shake the dust out. We need to not feel that we're so beaten down that it's the same old, same old. It becomes very, very dangerous.
I'm sorry. If I could ask one final question on the topic, you had mentioned obviously they're still planning on going through with the shelter in partnership with Four Legs Good now. What a name!
We don't know that. Four Legs Good only has a 2-month contract, from what I understand. Although many foils have been submitted to see what that contract looks like, and so far nobody has seen it, and that's for another day.
Okay.
Go ahead with it's. I think I'll try to anticipate your question. It's unclear who will be installed in the new shelter if and when it's built. That's unclear. This Four Legs Good was a stopgap. For many reasons that are the subject of a different story. Mm-hmm. But where were you going with the question?
Just beyond that, in terms of what were you concerned about coming with the increased power of Rockland Green? Were you perhaps concerned about more projects like the shelter that's obviously come under a lot of controversy, or other political moves that they could be making? I mean, what's the concern for the future?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. What I'm concerned about is when we look at how they have operated, when they ignored their own protocols when it came to acquiring this building in the first place. They did not do a thorough search. When I look at when you go to a Rockland Green meeting and a reasonable question is asked, the answer is always from the chairman, "Oh, call my office. I'll get back to you on that." And believe me, he does not. The problem is, an important meeting being held at 11 in the morning when absolutely nobody would know about a very important thing that was being voted on. The way that they upended the shelter, itself, a couple of weeks ago, it is just, what we're seeing is an agency that is overstepping, and that is being led by somebody. I think that's very has a lot of power and uses it. And the worst part about it is that it goes unchecked. I mean, I have been to enough Rockland Green meetings to know that essentially everybody else, all of our elected officials, essentially it's a rubber stamp. They sit on it. No questions are asked. There's no discussion about anything. This is not the way democracy is supposed to work. And if Rockland Green is a microcosm of why we don't have anybody else running for town supervisor across the board, then I would say be afraid, be very afraid, as we approach Halloween. A good line. No, and I don't mean to make light of it. I'm taking this, very seriously. I feel that we have a very serious issue in this county. It needs attention. It needs more than Facebook comments. It needs more than the grumbles that I hear behind the scenes and the calls that I get. And we cannot allow ourselves to, as a democracy, as a community, to feel that we're helpless. Or that we need to be educated. Otherwise, we're sitting ducks, and the result could be hikes in your taxes. But there's other it's problematic when you have a concentration of power that's being exploited. So that's the essence of today's history lesson.
Well, thank you, Tina Traster from the Rockland County Business Journal. We do appreciate your insight into the business world. If anybody else out there wants any more information on Rockland business, the best place to get it is the Rockland County Business Journal. You can find their website, rcbiz, that's rcbiz.com, rcbizjournal.com, or you can check out their Facebook, Twitter. They've got the social medias out there with links to the website. Tina, again, thank you so much. Have a great week, and we will speak to you next Monday.
Okay, have a great week, you guys.